Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. My name is Ijama, and I'm your host. And this week, I have with me Leah. Leah owns the Etsy shop Curious Art Lab. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Ijama.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I want to say it's another thank you. Leah actually left feedback, an iTunes review, and I was very happy to see that. I was actually very, I don't know what the word is, touched by the feedback, because we were talking before we started the recording, and I was saying sometimes I know that some people listen to the podcast, but I don't always know if they're enjoying it or if there's something more they want to hear or something they don't like hearing. And so when I see reviews, either in iTunes or on Stitcher or on the website, it just lets me know that somebody really is out there listening, and I really appreciate the reviews that I get. So thank you for leaving a review.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I will tell you that I didn't discover the podcast until I think it was December, when I was in the midst of my Christmas Etsy rush. And listening to it was really helping me get through the packaging and just, the stress that comes around that time of year. So I was really grateful for the podcast, and that's why I reached out to you, and was very, very excited when you invited me to come on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So one of the things I do is, like, when people reach out to me, I'll look them up and see if they're on Etsy and see, what they're about. Because usually if someone is listening, they have some tie into Etsy. And so I'll go and do some background investigative work and see. And I went to your Etsy shop and I was just blown away by your artwork. Leah makes beautiful art. It's called Curious Art, and it really is curious, because I was looking at it, and I remember I would tilt my head when I'm looking at some pieces. I'm like, whoa, what's that about? What's that piece saying? It's really very unique, but I don't want to talk all about it. Can you tell us what you sell?
Well, on Etsy, I sell mainly prints, but also original paintings and some items that I put in the category of oddments and curiosities, which could include anything. Right now, I think I have a little Valentine locket and a piece of Victorian scrap that I painted an image on the back of. It's just sort of a section in my shop for the things that don't fit in any other category. Okay. But go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that my paintings are mainly in acrylic. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, I'm getting a weird thing on James's computer. That's the problem with using my son's computer.
You're coming in fine.
Okay, that's good. My medium is acrylics mainly, and but I also use collage elements. I collect old books, like really old 19th century textbooks and things like that, and I like to use elements from those books. I scan them and I incorporate them into my work. So that's pretty much my style, I guess.
So is it digital art, or do you paint them? How do you make it?
Well, I do have some all digital pieces, but the vast majority are the text itself is scanned, and I might work out a sketch in Photoshop, but the actual artwork is mainly painted in acrylics. I have very tiny brushes. I'm a crazy detail freak, and I will just spend hours and hours and hours on a painting.
Wow. How long does it take you to make one? Well, they're all different sizes, I guess.
Yeah,
so it depends.
Yeah. I tend to work small so that I can actually finish a painting.
Yes. Yeah.
It usually takes me around a week I'm not working like around the clock for that week, but it takes me around a week to finish a painting if it's just like a smallish one. And the large ones, there's one in my shop, a print in my shop right now that was a commissioned painting, and that took me it took me over a year to finish.
Whoa, which one? What's it called? So we can
it's
look
called
at it.
Dreaming, and you'll see when you look at it, it has a lot of stuff going on.
Wow. Who
It
can
took me a
you
long
tell
time.
us who commissioned it?
Well, it was actually she does not want her name.
Okay, then don't say.
But it was somebody who found me through my blog,
Oh, okay, cool.
and she just really liked my style, and she gave me such free reign. It was wonderful.
Wow.
I love a commission that where it's not, strictly
Right. You don't have guidelines
regimented.
and what
Yeah,
have you. Yeah, because you're an artist. You need to be free to.
and I'm a particularly sort of I've worked as an illustrator for years. I should probably bring that up because before I even had my Etsy shop, I was an illustrator for a long time, and I'm also a calligrapher. I do book titles and things like that. But so I get a lot of briefs from art directors all the time, and it's just a wonderful freedom to be able to just paint whatever is in my head.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. You've done work for the New York Times and Cricket Magazine. Was that as an illustrator?
Yeah, well, yes, both of those were illustration, and I also have lots and lots of clients for my book jacket calligraphy. If you go on my website, you can see a client list. It's pretty long, but I've been in the business for a while.
Oh, excellent. And I'm going to have links to Leah's website so everyone can go and check out what she's doing over on the website and past clients that she's done work for. That is so cool. How long have you been doing this type of artwork?
Well, are you talking about the illustration or the paintings?
The paintings.
That is actually a fairly recent development. I just actually it was when my kids went to college that I really started doing that, which was gosh, I can't remember the year exactly, but it was not that long ago.
Okay.
And I just had a little bit more free times, and that empty nest thing. I have twins, so when they went away to school, it was all at once, And so I did it largely as a distraction, I guess.
Okay. It seemed like it just opened up a whole new world of creativity, a new creative outlet for you, because I'm telling you, I'm going to put links to Leah's store. If you're listening to this, you need to check out these paintings. They're very unique.
Oh, thank you.
Now, do you make just one of each, or do you make multiples of each?
Well, when it comes to the actual paintings, I never repeat them, but I do sell prints of my paintings on Etsy. So there are multiples of the prints available. But people have asked me in the past if I would, when an original sells that they wanted to buy, they'll ask me if I can redo it, and I just can't. Right. It's just it's a one-shot deal for me.
Yeah. I wondered about that, and that's. I think that comes with the Etsy territory anyway. Most things tend to be one of a kind. Yeah,
and I feel comfortable on Etsy partly because of that. It's funny because I'm not really a very good salesperson. I've never been good at the promoting side of things and that sort of thing, and so, when I had a friend who recommended that I put a shop on Etsy, and I was so reluctant to do it. I was just like, oh gosh, I can't sell things, But it doesn't feel like that on Etsy. It has a completely different feel. It's a very comfortable place for me to be, and I really have enjoyed it.
Yeah. Was your hesitation that you felt you would have to convince people to buy your pieces?
Exactly, and I'm just not good at that. And as an illustrator and calligrapher, that has held me back too, because I just, I'm not a cold call kind of person.
Yeah.
And so, I thought, oh my gosh, that's just one more selling job. I can't take it, but it isn't like that at all. So
yeah. So when did you first discover Etsy?
Well, I had a friend, I still have a friend, who's a jewelry designer, and she does sort of steampunk style jewelry. And she told me about Etsy. I think it was in around 2008 or 9, somewhere in there.
Okay.
But I did, and I signed up for Etsy And this is kind of the way I sometimes do things. I think, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I start it and then I get cold feet. And
Yeah.
So it took me a long time before I actually put a shop up there. I didn't start my shop until the end of 2011. Okay. And that was because I had a series of illustrations that were featured on a popular online site called A Word a Day, and I got a lot of requests for prints.
Oh, okay.
And original, but mainly for prints. And I was like, okay, well, this is the time. I'm just going to do it. It'll make it easier to just have them be able to shop there instead of having to, negotiate each one through email. And so I took the plunge, and I think I had like maybe just 5 or 7 items up, But because of that, because it was sort of a built-in demand at first from that website,
yeah,
it gave me a little boost. It got me started faster than maybe it would have been if I just decided to do it without that situation. So I think it actually worked out pretty well. Gave me some early sales so that anyone looking at my shop would see that I'd actually sold something and that sort of thing.
Right. So did some of your customers from A Word a Day come over to Etsy to buy from you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
After the first few inquiries, I was just like, okay, this is the time. This is when it makes sense to do that.
Oh, so you would just redirect them to Etsy,
right?
Oh,
right.
Perfect. Okay.
And,
Now I see.
And I think it was like 3 days into the week. I illustrated a week of words, and I think by Wednesday I was like, okay, I've got to get that Etsy shop.
Yeah.
It's just this is too complicated this way. So I just sort of took the plunge.
Yeah, that was a perfect way to drive traffic to your store.
It really was a good start. It was like a little jump start.
Yeah. So do you do Etsy full time, or do you have a job outside of Etsy?
Oh no. Well, I don't have a job per se. Everything I do is freelance, and I work from home. Okay. But Etsy is definitely not my full-time occupation. I would put it pretty far down the line in terms of the actual time that I spend on it compared to the illustration and calligraphy freelance work.
Okay. So how do you manage your time between the illustration and calligraphy and then selling on Etsy?
Well, that's a good question. Probably not as well as I should, but I'm a compulsive list maker. So, and I actually, I'm kind of I don't know if you'd call it maybe a goal setter or a resolution maker or something like that. The way that I can get things done best is if I sort of take time out each week and say, okay, what do I want to accomplish this week? What are my deadlines that I have to make for my illustration work? Do I have time to start a painting? Do I have time to do some listings and things like that? Okay. So I just sort of try and foresee the week ahead, and then I make to-do lists for each day. And I do my best to try and keep up with those lists, but sometimes I fall behind. But
yeah, I know.
But the illustration deadlines have to come first because those are for publications, and they have very strict, timelines.
So when you started as an illustrator, were you always freelance?
I spent one summer working at an ad agency, and I learned a lot, but one of the things I learned was that I did never want to work at an ad agency. So since then, I have been freelance the whole time. And when I first started out, I was doing a lot more calligraphy that was on the sort of filling in certificates and addressing wedding invitations. And,
I did that too, actually.
It's an easy entryway, easy in the sense that there's always a demand for it, but not easy in the sense that it's kind of a fraught thing to do. You're working with other people's paper, which is a pain in the neck. And
there's always the stress of messing up, and then they only have so many.
Exactly. And certificates. I still do some sort of glorified certificates, I guess you could call them, diplomas for university programs where they really want to make it showy, and they have like gold paint on, all the.
Oh, I've
Very fancy.
always wondered who does those.
Well, I'm one of them.
Wow. Okay. I'm impressed. I remember when I got my diploma, I remember looking at it and thinking, did they print this or did somebody actually write this?
Nowadays, some people do. I mean, a lot of them are printed, but I think when they want to make it really, really, fancy looking.
Yeah.
The ones I do are for a fellowship program, and they're trying to, sort of up their status. So
right.
It surprised me how much they were willing to pay, because I told them, when they told me what they wanted, I said, well, that's not going to be cheap. And they were like, it's okay.
Wow.
So,
yep. That's what you want to hear. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just do
Always
it.
Nice.
So I have a question. You worked at an ad agency.
Yeah.
You interned briefly in one summer.
Yeah.
Have you seen Mad Men?
I have.
Was it anything like that?
Oh, no. I mean,
Okay.
it was, in some ways it was. In some ways it was that I don't really want to get,
okay, don't say
bad
anything.
about it. But the thing that put me off is that, like I told you, I'm not really that much of a salesperson. I'm not really a good seller. And, one of the reasons I'm not good at it is because I am kind of scrupulously honest.
No.
And these guys were,
okay, enough said. I think we get it. And anyone who's watched Mad Men, will understand what you're talking about. And if you haven't watched Mad Men, well, look on Netflix or something.
But thankfully, by the time I was working there, the sexism wasn't quite as horrendous as it.
Oh my goodness. I look at that sometimes and I'm like, there's no way that was real. There is no way.
No, it was. I'm old enough to know that it was real, but luckily I wasn't that. I'm not that old that I was in the midst.
Okay, good.
So yeah. Okay. But seriously, I don't think that they're exaggerating it. I honestly don't.
Really.
Really. I know people. Actually, I have relatives who are in the ad industry at that time, and no, I don't think it's exaggerated.
Oh, okay, well, good to know. I just thought, this has to be fictionalized for TV, but
well,
okay.
I'm sure. I'm sure there is. I'm sure it's sort of,
Yeah.
They play it up, but it was there. It was definitely there.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's rein it back in. So your Etsy shop, is it profitable yet?
Well, it makes a profit,
okay.
Yes, but it doesn't support me.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it definitely does make a profit. And
okay.
Actually, the main thing it does is, like I was saying before, most of my work is directed by other people. And the main thing having Etsy there really has changed for me is that it gives me an outlet to paint, and I can support my paintings by selling the prints. If I were to work full-time painting, it would be very, very hard because my paintings take so long to do.
Right.
And, to really price them at an hourly rate that's anything like supportive right. would make them crazy expensive. I mean, they're already not cheap, but it would be insanely expensive. And, So, but being able to sell the prints on Etsy means that I can spend time on a painting and know that eventually I'm going to get some recompense for it.
Okay. That's good. I think you've struck a nice balance, it sounds like to me, between having your a creative outlet on Etsy, but then also you're doing the illustration and all, which also helps to, one, support you, first and foremost, but you can segue some of that into your Etsy shop as well.
That's true. And the main thing is I'm just a compulsive drawer and painter and letterer, and I'm going to be doing it all the time anyway.
Yeah.
So,
did you teach yourself? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say that being able to I can learn techniques when I'm working on illustrations, and it all builds on each other. That's what everything's sort of synergistic at this point. So okay. I like it.
Okay. So were you self-taught or did you take classes, or did all this just come naturally to you?
Well, actually, kind of a little bit of both, because I started really young. Like, I started doing calligraphy when I was about 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been drawing since, I was old enough to hold something in my hand.
Yeah.
But and my mom is an artist, although she hasn't worked full time as an artist. She worked as an arts administrator in a hospital, and so it was very artistic household. We were always encouraged to do artistic things,
Okay.
and so a lot of what my style looks like and so forth is just stuff that came naturally to me, basically.
Okay.
But I did study art when I was in college. I majored in art, and I took a lot of art history courses and things like that, and that definitely has affected my style as well. So,
Okay.
I was happy to do that. But it wasn't in an art school. It was in a liberal arts college. So,
Okay.
it was the art was only part of the education,
Yeah. So what inspires you when you're starting a piece or to make a piece?
Well, everything inspires me. That it's sort of a blessing and a curse, because just really I can get inspired by pretty much anything there is, But especially I would say anything in the natural world. I love to garden, and I like to go for walks and just like look at the ground and pick things up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also get really inspired by other artwork. I'm always, love to go to museums, have tons of art books, and there's, now an infinite amount of art online that I could get lost in, like Bibliodyssey, the website Bibliodyssey. I could spend days in that site. Or 50 Watts is another one that's like that. That's just an endless flood of inspiration.
Wow.
So I have no trouble getting inspired. And then sketching, it's weird, but I often don't know what I'm drawing until my hand starts drawing it, It's like it just sort of comes out of my hand.
Wow. It's like your hand has its own brain.
It really kind of does, because I can really sometimes not really know what I'm going to draw, and then some shape that starts to form on the page will suddenly tell me what I'm drawing. I think all those connections are being made in some inaccessible part of my brain that only drawing
Can tap into.
connects.
Right? Yeah. Interesting. So do you ever spend time looking at other Etsy shops that sell prints similar? I don't know what to say similar to yours, because yours are unique, but
No, I understand what you're saying. And
Yeah,
okay. I do browse around Etsy. That's definitely fun to do. I don't really do it in a sort of researchy way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just happening upon things,
Yeah.
Like you'll see something in somebody else's favorites, or you'll see something in a treasury, and you know how that goes. That's what it's for.
Yes. Yeah. And have you had any bad experiences on Etsy so far?
Really, no. I mean, I guess you could say I had one bad experience when I sent somebody the wrong print, but that was totally my fault. And she emailed me to say, this isn't the one I ordered. It was at Christmas time, and I was afraid that I'd mixed up the whole day's worth of shipments, So, but it turned out I just, for some reason, put the wrong print in hers. So I just sent her the right one, and I told her to keep the other one and either keep it herself or give it as a gift or whatever she wanted to do with it. And she was perfectly happy. So
of course.
It was a happy ending. So it wasn't really a bad experience, but it did make me feel bad.
Yeah. Well, and that just, I'm sure, instilled goodwill in her, as a customer.
I think once, I think the crucial thing with anything like that is just really being honest and forthright with the client. So if something goes wrong, if you say, "Oh, this is what's happening," like, I almost forgot to tell. In fact, I'd completely forgotten about this. But when I very first started my Etsy shop, it was terrible because I do print on demand, and my computer crashed like 3 days after I'd opened my shop.
Oh, great.
So thankfully I have cloud backup, which I've had for a while, and I recommend everybody have.
Oh, yeah.
But it took me a couple of days to, get set up again so that I could do my prints. But I just convoed everybody who had ordered a print and explained what was happening. And I didn't have anybody, say, okay, we'll cancel my order.
Yeah.
I offered to cancel or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was totally understanding. So
yeah. And I like that because I
key.
think it speaks to the mindset of shopping on Etsy. I think most people who shop there are looking for one-of-a-kind items, and most one-of-a-kind items take a bit more time to make. Like most of them, not most, but a good number are on demand, and so.
Yeah, I think that's true, and people aren't as fixated on instant gratification on Etsy.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Not like if it were Amazon, where they have the 2-day shipping thing. I'm sure it would be a very different story.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of operation.
No, I would not expect it. Would you say that selling on Etsy has changed your life in any way?
Well, yes. Like I said, it's enabled me to do more of my own painting. And
Sure.
And another thing that I love about it is that as an illustrator and even as a painter, when I have my work in galleries and so forth, I don't really often have contact with the people who buy the work. It's or the end user. I when I'm illustrating, I talk to the art directors, but that's a little bit different. And it's really nice to hear the stories of why somebody wants a certain piece. I get a lot of conversations like that, and I love that. It's really fun to know what about a certain piece grabbed somebody's attention. There's a lot more communication there than there is in any other venue that I've ever had.
So you mean on Etsy, when people are placing an order for a piece, they tend to go into the reasons why they want that particular one?
Yeah, I get the little note that you can leave when you're making an order. I get lots of times people will tell me, who it's for and why, and sometimes I'll get emails from them and long conversations, and I really enjoy it. I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, especially at Christmas, but
yeah,
but still, it's really nice. It's gratifying to know what it is that people are responding to.
Oh, that's nice.
Fun.
Yeah. Now, so I know you said you're not good at promotion, but do you try to promote your shop in any way?
Well, I have like I have sort of I have a Facebook page and a Facebook, regular whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But you can probably tell by my inability to tell you what that is. That I'm
you
not
have
really
a Facebook page, yes.
Right, but I also have that regular the personal thing, and then an official Facebook page, and I don't hang out on Facebook at all. I find it overwhelming. It's just too much for me. So
Okay.
I have this system where I can sort of automatically forward my blog posts, and that's mainly my Facebook presence, which is the wrong way to do it. And I know it's the wrong way to do it, but Facebook just, I don't know. It's too much for me. It's just too many things coming at me.
Do you get much interaction on Facebook?
Well, not so much because I don't
Because you're not
spend
there.
much time. Yeah.
Okay.
Where I do get interaction is on Twitter. I like Twitter better because it's just a little bit more manageable for my brain.
Oh, interesting.
So, and I've had some actually really wonderful experiences on Twitter, meeting other artists, and it's sort of a support group in a way, and in the same sort of way that the forums on Etsy are, for Etsyans specifically. But I know a lot of people who are like cartoonists or fine artists on Twitter, and it's fun to see what they're up to and just have a quick little conversation with them from time to time. And I do put my my new pieces up. I'm not promo-y enough to like put treasuries up there and things.
Yeah.
But I do when I have a new piece in, I don't ever do like just the renewals or anything like that. But if I have a new piece in, I will put it on my Twitter.
Okay.
And it actually does drive traffic. I see a fair bit of traffic coming from Twitter. Whether it ends up in sales, I don't know. But
Okay. And then you also are on Tumblr, right?
Yeah, the Tumblr account is kind of a specific thing, though. And this is something that came through Twitter. I've been doing these alphabet challenges. There's a cartoonist named Ben Toll who started an alphabet challenge. And it started out as an animal alphabet. And then when we finished the animal alphabet, it went on to a monster alphabet, and then a fiction alphabet, and then we did a robot alphabet, and now we're doing a music alphabet. And it's just one of those fun little things. And sometimes, I can really get into it and do a serious piece where usually I don't have time to do that, but I do try to keep up with it week by week. Okay. And I've made a lot of friends through that. It's really been fun. Okay. And that's on Tumblr. The one that's going now is called Alpha Bands.
Alpha Bands. And I'm going to have links to all Leah's Etsy, not Etsy, but all her social media accounts in the show notes. So if you want to go ahead and check them out. Now, the alphabet projects on Tumblr, are those for sale or those are just for fun?
Well, it's sort of a little bit of both, depending on how people want to do it. It's anybody can contribute. And you can do with your art what you will. I mean, obviously, if you're putting something up that's got a copyright connection to it, you might not be able to sell it. you know. But assuming that all of that is not a consideration, then you're free to sell whatever it is you do. It's not a selling venue, but I can say I usually do a blog post about the piece, and I can mention that it's in my Etsy shop if it is in my Etsy shop. I don't put everything I do in my Etsy shop, though.
Okay.
It would be a mess if I did.
Right. Now, I don't know where I saw this. I don't know if I read it somewhere in your profile or what, but did you at some point say you were excessively fond of ampersands?
It's true.
Okay, all right. I was like, where did I get that? Because I wrote it down and I'm like, I know I must have gotten this from somewhere, but I don't see, I can't find where I got it.
I think it might actually be in my Etsy profile. I'm not sure. It's in some profile somewhere. I have a thing about ampersands and I get teased about it, but I think it's because it's a calligrapher's dream. An ampersand is because you can go wild with an ampersand.
Yes, I can relate. Yes.
So you do calligraphy too. That's really interesting.
I do. Yes, not as much as I used to do. And I didn't know I could do it. It was a friend of mine I actually just fell into. Okay, I don't want to take over your interview, but yes, I fell into it.
I want to know. I'm curious for a reason,
Oh, okay. Well, a friend of mine used to do, well, not used to, but does weddings. She's a wedding coordinator and she also does calligraphy. And there was one particular wedding where she was the coordinator, but then also doing the calligraphy, and she was just overwhelmed. And she goes, I think you can do this. And actually, I need you to do this. You have to help me. And so she just put paper and calligraphy pens in front of me and said, right, let me see what you can do. And so I started, I was looking at different styles and I started to copy some of them. And she's like, I knew you could do it. And so I started doing the invitations and the place settings and all that. And that was how I got into it. And then I loved it. And I took classes to learn more styles and just different fonts, just the different styles of writing. And I just really enjoyed it.
Well, that's really cool. I didn't know that about you, so I'm glad to know.
Yeah. So let me see. Now the website, did you build the website yourself, or is it something that someone built for you and you just update it on a regular basis?
A little bit of both. It's based on a regular WordPress site, but my son, who's very well versed in computers, the same one who set me up with a microphone.
Yes.
He helped me tweak it and make it look the way that I wanted to. And I also took a bunch of online courses from lynda.com in CSS and HTML and a little bit of PHP, although that still scares me.
Whoa, look at you.
But yeah, I'm trying to learn enough so that I don't have to be that horrible mother who uses her children for tech support all the time.
Yes.
But but I'm not quite there yet.
Okay.
I still ask him from time to time. But yeah, I tweaked it quite a lot from the framework. But now it's to the point where most of the time I just treat it like a blog, essentially, because it's on that WordPress foundation. So,
have you at any point ever wanted to quit or close your Etsy shop?
Oh no. It's not overwhelming enough. I mean, it's not either good enough or bad enough that I would want to close it.
Yeah.
I don't get overwhelmed. It doesn't take over my life, except maybe around Christmas, and
which is good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not. But it's not like it's super exhausting, and it's also enough of a profit maker that it's not worth it. So I've never been tempted to quit.
Okay, good. Do you ever get into a creative rut, and how do you get yourself out of those?
I wouldn't say I get into a rut exactly. I'm pretty non-rutty. I like to mix it up, but what does happen is that sometimes I can just get exhausted. Like I did a children's book recently, and finishing that book, it felt like it just wrung everything out of me, And sometimes I think it just helps to do something different for a little while, fill the batteries, so to speak.
Yeah.
and then once I get drawing and I'm not like just brain dead, that I never don't have ideas. I have too many ideas. That's not the hard part.
It's just getting them all out.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. So what would you say is one lesson about selling on Etsy that you learned the hard way?
The hard way? I'm not sure if I really learned anything the hard way.
Okay.
I have learned a lot since I started out there. There are many things I didn't understand about the search engine optimization and all that. That took a little bit of investigation and trying to figure out. And I'm kind of stupidly obstinate about. I don't want the very first word of my titles to be just a keyword word. I always like to have the title of the artwork, which really is not SEO friendly, but for some reason that's just, I can't get over it. But my titles are usually very short, so it's not too bad. But
do you try to put the keywords in your description, or do you just don't bother with SEO?
I sort of try to do that, and I sort of go in little spurts where I'll go in and just look through listings and see, okay, did I really do this right? But I think I still have tons and tons of mistakes up there. It took me a long time because at first it was the keywords were all one word, and when they switched to encouraging multiple words, that kind of threw me for a loop for a while. I just wasn't sure what the heck I was doing for a little while there. But I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. But I'm still far from an expert when it comes to that.
Always learning.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do like to learn, though. That's one good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, good. So what advice would you give to either a new Etsy seller or someone who's like on the fence about selling on Etsy, or a veteran? You can pick which one you want to give advice to.
I would dream of giving advice to a veteran. I'm sure they could give me a lot of advice.
Well, you've been on for a couple of years. I think you would have some words to share to them. I think that the SEO is good to know about, and even though it's kind of
confusing and you'll get conflicting advice, I still think it's worth investigating that. I think it's good to have a lot in your shop, but as I said, I started with somewhere between 5 and 7 pieces. So, I'm just telling, I think it does help because I think people will come to the shop and they'll be drawn in by one piece that they see somewhere, but they might see something else that's completely unexpected and also be drawn to that. So, you'll get more multiple orders the more pieces you have in your shop.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, Leah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, thank you.
And if you have any feedback or you want to check out Leah's paintings or her prints, all the links are going to be in the show notes for the episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.